Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to the Football Lounge. Just a quick, short message. On this day, February 6th, 1958, Manchester United lost the flowers of Manchester in the Munich air disaster. Today, we've seen the football world unite around Manchester United and offer their remembrance of that great team. A broken plane, a broken dream, a broken heart, a broken team. No words said, a silent vow. We loved you then, we love you now.
Yes, absolutely wonderful words there, Ribble. Thank you so much. Obviously, it is a day of remembrance for all Manchester United fans around the globe today. But we are going to be looking at something slightly different today. Try and keep the moods up, and we're going to be looking at the team of the season so far. Now, as obviously, I have Rebel, but I'm going to come to Ian first. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and I thought Rebel that was very, beautiful what you just said about the Munich air disaster. And before we went on air, I was just thinking that Man City and Man United shared a football stadium through the traumas of the Second World War, and that disaster was only 12 or 13 years later. So the unity that must have and pain that must have been felt, red or blue families together who'd been watching their teams in one stadium, I'm not sure we can quite comprehend today.
Absolutely. I think, Ian, some events transcend football. That was one of them. And the other one is that horrible incident for Liverpool, and that was the Hillsborough incident. So I don't think, no matter how deep rivalries get, we'll ever forget these life-changing moments in our football history.
No, it feels like your brothers, your family. When football, there's a tragedy within football, Bradford or wherever, and yeah, you realise you drop all your scarves and you just put your arms around each other. Your brother football fans, just like we are on these sports channels, and when we don't meet that often, but we talk to each other, we communicate every day, and I think when if anything happened to one of us, we'd feel like brothers regardless of team.
And I think as well, our thoughts obviously are, I believe it's Turkey where there was a horrible earthquake and some players have already been identified as having passed away. So our thoughts with everybody in Turkey as well at the moment.
Yep, our thoughts indeed. If you do want to obviously learn more about the Munich disaster or any other disaster, there is many sources across the internet. Or if you're more of somebody that likes to watch documentaries or stuff like that, I can suggest, I do have it here, United. It's a very good and honest depiction of the Munich disaster, and it's put across very well as well. So let's do a little bit of housekeeping we need to do. It has slightly changed from normal, as we can see here. We are an official partner with Rafe Esports Energy Drink. Now, Rafe is a powdered formula that you mix with water, so it's a lot healthier than generic cans that you can get. It's full of all the good stuff that you need, and it's designed to give you the edge that you need to get that little step ahead, in your competitive gaming or your sports. Now, as you can see there, we have a code for 10% off. It is FTSN22, or by all means, scan that QR code and it'll sort it all out for you. Thank you so much to Rafe.
Yes, indeed. And I do have a bone to pick with you, Mr. Cullum. My demands was that I had a new tub of Wraith sitting in my dressing room when I arrived in FTSN Studios, and all I see is a very empty, unsatisfying tub of Wraith right here. Where is my Wraith, Cullum? Give me my goddamn Wraith.
Well, your Wraith has been ordered and it's on its way. It is on its way, because they've got a lot of orders, because they're shipped worldwide. So they've got a lot of orders.
Even to the north of England, because I haven't got any.
Even to the north of England, they were shipped worldwide.
I believe you have tried this one though now, Cullum. This
yes. Coca-Cola. Oh, that stuff is dangerous. It is so dangerous. I had it, I was like, the best way I can describe that flavour, I'm going back to my youth here, the Mr. Freeze pops that you used to get at your local shop. When it had all melted and you got that bit of liquid at the bottom, you just used to, that's what it tasted like, exactly like that. But it's so dangerous. I'm going to pass on these comments to you, Rebel, just before we get into the show.
We have the very dangerous Canadian from across the pond, I believe this is it?
Yeah.
So no. Team of the season, obviously, all Arsenal. We'll debate that one. One of the only reputable big clubs left. I know. Come on now. May as well give City. I'm not going to read that part. So yeah, he's obviously saying stuff about the various teams, and we'll go with the league the right way. Fair enough. And sorry, just disturbing me. All this ruining the Prem badge. Oh well. Okay. Fair enough. And hello, Mr. Silver Fox, another Arsenal fan. So it looks like it's the Arsenal clique in the chat at the moment.
Yes, it is at the moment.
Remind me how much Arsenal spent in the last couple of years. It's quite a few quid, isn't it?
Well, that's for a completely different show. I will get an Arsenal fan on, a Man United fan on, a Newcastle and a City fan, Ian. That is you. And you can all have it out in one big, massive, over-the-top battle royale or something. But we are here to talk about the team of the season so far. Now, before we get into the full team of the season, because I have got some to show you, you can both have a little look and chat through it. We're going to go through positions first. So now, what I want from you first is, so you can be the same or you can be different and have a little bit of a debate here, is goalkeeper of the season. I'll come to you first, Ian.
Statistically, it's got to be Nick Pope. They only just broke their clean sheet record over the weekend. He's not behind the most experienced back four in the world. A new back four, not used to playing together. Nick Pope, statistically, and certainly, every time I've watched him, looks safe as houses. I think Ramsdale is an exciting goalkeeper who is more front-footed and propels the team forward at a rate of knots. So it's a difficult one between those two for me. One is safe as houses. The other one is quite safe, but also starts the movement going at a better rate than any goalkeeper in the league.
I have to agree. Rebel?
I love the way that he slipped right into that piece there as well. Fair play to you, Ian, getting the marketing plug going. It's very hard to argue beyond Pope, and he would obviously be my choice. But I think notable candidates in the way that he's changed the play of teams, Ramsdale obviously has to get a mention. I think De Gea this season has been very solid. And obviously the two main protagonists of Ederson and Alisson haven't really hit that mark, but there's quality there, but it has to be Pope. There's no question.
Well, congratulations to Nick Pope. You have won goalkeeper of the season so far. We will see if you can retain that at the end of the season. We've just got a few more comments here about the goalkeeping situation.
Ramsdale and Pope should be a debate, I would think. Yeah, there's definitely room for manoeuvring. Has to be Pope's as the silver one, so even he as an Arsenal fan is going that way. And it's definitely not Hugo Lloris. Yeah, Hugo's probably in the same category as Pickford at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, before we move on, going on to what he's just said there about Hugo Lloris, obviously, he performed very, very well in the World Cup, managed to get quite far in the World Cup as well. He used to always, his name used to be in and roundabouts for a player of the season. What exactly is happening with him this season?
I think age, in my opinion. I think those reaction speeds are getting that fraction slower. I think he's had an absolute paper defence in front of him. Like, despite what Tottenham's fans say when they signed Romero, I think there's just that element of a bit of a kamikaze defender about him that gets teams into trouble. Like when you look at the foundation of City, when they had their most solid defence, Diaz was a rock. We're starting to see that now with Martinez at Manchester United. He's a rock and they're building around him. Again, the likes of Saliba at Arsenal, they're players that don't tend to get you into trouble. And there's going to be a player that we'll be talking about shortly for contention of the defender of the season at Newcastle. I think there's just too much issues in that Spurs defence, and Hugo, unfortunately, is on the wrong side of his career to be able to get them out of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the comment I'd say is that goalkeeping has changed such a lot. We can probably drag our memories back to the 90s, let's just say. I can go back to the 80s. And goalkeepers then, their only job was to stop the ball going in the net. And goalkeepers have totally changed in what's required from them. And, I've sat behind that in the Homesdale at Crystal Palace and been super critical of the goalkeepers at Palace, like Wheater, who is a 90s style goalkeeper. They're shot stoppers, but they don't start the momentum of the team going forward. And if I was to criticise Lloris and to a lesser extent David De Gea, I feel both of them are a little bit locked in the past. They're great shot stoppers, but that isn't enough anymore. When you look at the propulsion of Arsenal, the propulsion of City, the propulsion that Ten Hag is trying to get into his team, the engine has to start with the quick pace balls out from the back, the playing the sweeper role that allows to a much more forward press. And Lloris was always behind De Gea, and those two are both a long, long, long way behind Alisson and Ederson, to an extent, in the Premier League, created the modern goalkeeper that are the likes of Ramsdale and, to an extent, Pope. And I'd like to mention Raya at Brentford, who's, I think, a really improving goalkeeper. You look at their momentum, and it comes from the goalkeeper. And that would be my criticism of Lloris. He's a little bit of a one-trick pony, and it's not good enough to be a modern goalkeeper.
I would tend to agree with what Ian's saying, and I would argue to a lesser extent that we're not seeing De Gea exposed as much. He seems to be trying to do a bit of what Ten Hag needs out of him, although not complete. But I do think it's probably actually interesting that he mentioned Raya, because I think that's one of the keepers that's on the short list of possibilities to come in to be targeted by the bigger clubs. So it'll be interesting to see where his destination will be.
Yeah, it will. I mean, looking on the outside, I mean, I played goalkeeper for many, many years. I'm a coach in that department as well. I'm very much a 90s goalkeeper. That's what I grew up with. That's why I got trained, how I got trained. And then, obviously, when I went and did all my coaching for that, obviously, that specific position, I had to relearn everything as well. And I'm still constantly learning now, because the evolution of goalkeeping has changed so much in such a short amount of time. And it is still changing to this second. They'll be working on things on how to improve themselves even better. Like you said, it's not just about stopping goals anymore. It's about the distribution and everything else as well. So yeah, Lloris is stuck in the past for me. That's my issue with Lloris. He is stuck in the past.
Before we move on from goalkeepers, I think it would be terse of us not to mention Martinez at Aston Villa, the World Cup winning goalkeeper, because if we all remember that final, everything, Messi gets all applaudits and Martinez gets rightly criticised for his photo posing with the trophy, etc. But I will remember for the rest of my days that one-on-one and how he stuck his leg out to prevent that goal right at the very end of extra time that won Argentina the World Cup. And, even though we've been rightly praising Nick Pope and Ramsdale, they've never been in a pressurized situation like a World Cup final and managed to do the business on the day. So I think we have to mention him in dispatches.
Yeah. I mean, he had a bit of a terrible time at the weekend, but you still can't take away the class that he actually does have at all. I'm just seeing a couple of comments here, so we'll be jumping in and out. So we got this one. The helmets that Petr Cech used to wear now, I don't think goalkeepers should be wearing that at all.
You can't say that. You cannot say that. Injuries
happen. Injuries happen. And
concussion is a really big deal, and I think we're still on the cusp of discovering the impact in our sport. We're looking at rugby and saying those naughty boys are the egg chasers, but I think in years to come we'll look back on when it's proven about the dementia aspect, the Jeff Astle Foundation, from the heavy leather balls, concussion and the impact will become a bigger thing. So sorry whoever made that comment, but I think that's silly.
Yeah, no, I mean, like they're saying, yes, obviously players' health is number one. It always should be number one. If it's a point where, it gets to a point where the injuries are that severe, then yes. But at this moment in time, no, I don't think they should. But we'll move on from that anyway. Right, let's go on to defender of the season.
I might come in here first and let Ian kind of ponder. Like, obviously, the big names are the likes of your Salibas, your Martinez's, and then obviously, I think I want to go for a winger and a centre back because I don't think it's fair to compare them both. Obviously, Trippier has been the number one wing back across Premier League, I think, this season. And even though I didn't actually put him into my team of the season, Botman, I think, from Newcastle also deserves an honourable mention. He's been fantastic, an absolute bargain for them.
I think Dan Burns done bloody well at left back for a Giant as well. You know, you have to say, you know, when you look at the dead ball going in at Newcastle into the area, you think no one's going to score against those guys.
I'm just
I'm
Colin.
not going to argue about that. I think the left back lad, oh God, I can't remember his name, at Brentford, is another up and coming player. What's his name? Henry. Rico Henry.
Yes.
I think he's done well at left back. But yeah, defender. I like your lad Martinez at United. He reminds me of Inter. I think he, you know, a year down the road, and we might be talking about him in that role. I'd say, you know, for his stature, he's incredible. When John Stones is fit, there's no one classier. But I'm happy to go with your call.
Okay, so who are we giving it to?
I tell you who we're not giving it to, Matip at Liverpool.
Do you know what? I think Botman deserves it more, I'll be honest with you, because I think what he does goes unsung a lot. Trippier does all the fancy Dan stats that are on the board, so I'm going to go for Botman.
I think that's interesting.
Okay, well, Botman has made it there. He is number one. Congratulations to Botman. I know you're watching. I know you watch this show every single week. So congratulations to you again. We will review at the end of the season, and we will see. There is a couple more comments here. Obviously, we've got the Arsenal guys shouting out
Saliba.
The tequila Saliba. There, honourable mention. I know he's messing about here, but he's on about Harry Maguire.
I'll send that to Monday for you.
Yep, we'll send that to him Monday. Don't worry about that. And then
Fabian Schär at Newcastle's done pretty good alongside as well, but I will go with Botman.
Yep, and then obviously he's also saying here, is it Fez? I can't pronounce his name.
Faz.
At all. Faz, that's the one, Faz. But he's saying here he's Liverpool's top goal scorer, but he actually had a very good game over the weekend.
Yeah, I feel for the lad. I think he's a class act.
He had a very good game, in my eyes anyway.
He's a good defender. It was just... Wasn't it Jamie Carragher once scored 2 own goals, and it didn't make him the worst defender in the world? Made him the worst pundit in the world, but not the worst defender.
I think as well you have to kind of take stock of the state that Leicester's in at the moment. Brendan Rodgers has been handed an absolute torrid job this season, and it's probably only for the fact that they're probably financially a bit iffy, one step away from being the next one on the managerial P45 list. But I think any player that shines in that Leicester team at the moment deserves to be an honourable mention because they are absolutely in dire straits at the moment.
Indeed.
They're not going down by any shadow.
No.
Rodgers is a good manager.
I'm hoping these next two are going to cause a little bit of friction. I want something. You're being too nice to each other at the minute. So I'm hoping these ones will cause a little bit of friction. So the next one is midfielder of the season. I'll come to you first, Ian.
I think there's a midfielder of the decade. It's called Kevin De Bruyne.
Okay, Kevin De Bruyne.
I'm going to have to disagree with my learned friend down there. I think overall in his career, absolutely Kevin De Bruyne has been fantastic. This season, however, I don't think he's in the top 3 overall in terms of staying consistent. I think Casemiro obviously deserves a mention in that. It's not going to be him. Partey has been phenomenal this season. But actually the one I'm going for is an Arsenal player, and it's Odegaard. I think he's been phenomenal this year.
So when it comes to assisting the leading goal scorer by miles in the Premier League, is that Odegaard or Kevin De Bruyne? Maybe I missed that.
Well, you have to look at the number of games that he's done that. Haaland's numbers have been missing for a number of weeks, and I think when you look at the number of games that Odegaard has influenced in total over the number of games, despite maybe the assist numbers being of a larger quantum for KDB, it was in a finite number of games in compared to how Odegaard went about his business for Arsenal. So I think if you're talking about the player that has made enough significant contributions in games where they were demanded, Odegaard has done more this season than KDB, but KDB overall still has a far greater legacy.
I would put him in one of my most improved slots without any shadow of doubt. I just don't think he's good enough to be numero uno for this season. I think Arsenal have got, without Saka tanking down that right, without Martinelli tanking down that right, would Odegaard have had the space? Would he have had the opportunity? I think, if I was going to pick a couple of players ahead, Saka, I know he's going to be in the attacking mode, but to me, he's head and shoulders better than Odegaard. And Partey as well, I think, has had a more emphatic role. And just a thought, Com, it's very, very difficult to say midfielder. Right? You've got attacking midfielders, you've got defending midfielders, and I think it's two different categories. I think Casemiro has been amazing in that way, and as has Partey and Rodri. It's a different job. I think Eriksen's been very good. I'd certainly vote for him as the best free central midfielder. And I'm actually praising Arsenal in a way, in that they're so rich on the flanks and they've got such a good defensive midfielder in Partey who's such an engine room. I just wonder whether Odegaard looks better than he really is because of this strength and opportunity that those guys around him give him.
Yeah, I suppose you made an interesting point about what if they didn't have Martinelli, what if they didn't have Saka, and obviously up until he got injured, Jesus leading the line. But when you think about it retrospectively, if you said, all right, let's take away Haaland from De Bruyne, let's take away Mahrez, let's take away Foden, for argument's sake. Now, obviously, City still have quite a number of talented players. I know that individually he's capable of that creative spark, but I think you have to look at the number of games Kevin De Bruyne influenced this year and look at the number of games that were in the balance that Odegaard influenced. Like, you cannot argue with Arsenal's number of games where they dropped points, and they were in battles at times, and those players stood up and delivered a result for them.
The only other comparison I'd say is Guimaraes at Newcastle. You've got Willock on one side and Longstaff on the other. I tell you what, I'd rather have Saka and Martinelli on either side of me, and yet Guimaraes has powered that Newcastle team forward with what are journeymen to left and right, not some of the best players in the world. If you're going to put up Guimaraes against Odegaard, I'm not sure that Guimaraes wouldn't get my vote, because I think he's done more to push Newcastle forward on his own than Odegaard has in what is a very good team setup. Just a thought.
Very interesting. Split decisions on the panel. God, I don't know. I don't know what to pick.
As a compromise, because obviously neither of us are going to agree to the other person's one, I'd actually prefer to nominate Guimaraes.
I think he's powered Newcastle forward like I've never seen a midfielder, and if it's just a vote for that first half of the season, it's not bad away.
Fair enough. There you have it. They've agreed on something.
We've found a common ground.
Yes, the common ground has been found. Now let's quickly move on to the next one, which is striker of the season.
One word: Rashford.
Well, the statistics wouldn't prove you right on that one. They'd say that there's two strikers quite a distance ahead in terms of Harry Kane, record goal scorer now for Spurs. And again, if I come back to the support that you've got all around you, and before I come to Haaland, how on earth has Harry Kane got all those goals this season with that shambles around him? You know, if Harry Kane hadn't took that away against City, I didn't see where the rest of the goals were coming from. Son is having the worst season ever at Spurs, and yet Harry Kane is still there, putting them all in the back of the net, carrying Spurs single-handedly on his shoulder, a bit like Guimaraes in Newcastle. That would be. I'm not saying you get my vote. I just think Haaland, for a player who's never set foot in the Premier League before, to have hit the deck sprinting like he has, surely he has to have the vote. I mean, Rashford has had a purple patch. It's no more than the purple patch. That's all I'd say. He's had a purple patch. I'd love to have seen that purple patch last season before. Hello, there's a new contract for you, £300,000 a week. I tell you, if that was put up for me, I might improve a little bit. I'm being a little critical on a purple patch rather than a start on day one of the season, because the vote is the first half of the season, not the second quarter of the season.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because arguably Haaland has gone missing for periods of that season. Kane has missed quite a few games where you'd say that his performance was less than acceptable. And with Rashford and any Manchester United player this year, you would have to kind of look at the way Ten Hag is working with those players, the way that Ten Hag's coaching team is enhancing the performances of those players as they get more and more time with them. So is it a case that Haaland or that Rashford wasn't firing all season, or was it the case that he was building Rashford into the level of performance that we see now? Because on retrospect, if you were to look at Gareth Southgate, he's probably thinking that Rashford at this stage probably should have been one of the players that was brought on earlier and may have kept England in the World Cup, because we've seen the way Rashford has ran roughshod over nearly every team since then, because he's the most uninformed forward in Premier League at the moment. Saka, again, another absolutely phenomenal player. But then I suppose the thing is, though, Colm, when we define striker, it does lead to, are we talking forwards? Because obviously Rashford is not playing at the spear of the attack. Harry Kane is, Haaland is.
Now,
strike by definition is about hitting the target. If I can just give you some statistics just to reflect on, to strike is to hit, to score. Marcus Rashford, in terms of minutes per goal this season, 171. Mitrovic at Fulham, 141. Ivan Toney, 131. Harry Kane, 116. Haaland, 66. So it's a strike rate. It's hitting the goal. 66 minutes per goal versus there's no one else even lower than 116.
Okay, I'd like just to throw in an interesting bit of a tidbit, just to kind of put the spanner completely into the rigging of the machine. There was a player called Romelu Lukaku. He was absolutely pony in games where push came to shove and you looked for that decisive moment to get you across line. But he put on goals for Jam in games where we were already 2 and 3-0 up. So you have to question, when you're weighing up the striker, do they do it when the pressure's on, when they need to grind the result out and come through and secure a 1 or a 3-point result for their team? Or do they come along and get 2 or 3 goals after the game has been put to bed?
The game wasn't put to bed. It's the Etihad when City put 6 past United, and Haaland scored 2 of them and made 2 of the other goals. Just a thought. But when I'm going to be consistent on some of the things I'm saying. When we said Guimaraes at Newcastle, amongst a fairly workman-like midfield, is a shining star. What about Toney at Brentford? What about Mitrovic at Fulham? They've scored 13 and 11 goals at a heck of a rate amongst players around them who are hardly world class. They have to have a mention in there. I'm certain the supporters of Brentford and Fulham would say that they've scored goals at incredibly influential moments that have propelled them into possibly even European places. If we were hey, I'm not encouraging Ivan Toney to go down the bookies, but if we were going down the bookies, then we'd have said Fulham and Brentford were possible relegation teams this season, and yet those two lads have carried them forward.
I will agree Mitrovic is an interesting one because history would have dictated that he would not have had the performance that he has had this season. He has been kind of the David Connolly of the yo-yo clubs in previous years, where scoring goals for Jam in Championship, comes up Premier League and does absolutely nothing. This season, for whatever reason, yeah, this guy has been on fire. So do you know what? Again, in view of compromise, maybe Mitrovic is the point of safety.
Yeah, maybe. I just I said the only reason I'm backing Haaland is people usually say it takes a while to settle into the Premier League. He's a very young player, and I mean, can we remember in our lifetime a player a striker making such an impact? Such an impact. It's in 10 years, let's just say, if we reflect back, can I remember anybody just driving a juggernaut through the set of a play like he has? Just no practice, no use of the Premier League in what is a much weaker City team.
I suppose, Ian, though, you did mention that obviously you did pummel us with the hat-tricks of Foden and Haaland, but then Fred done a man-marking job and cut off the supply, and obviously we know the result of the second game. But
come on, you cannot hang that on that incredibly dodgy decision swung that. City were in control of that game. They were utter control until that absolute farce. I'm sorry. In my mind, I'm doing a Men in Black on that section of the game. It's irrelevant after that game because one decision completely changed it. You can talk about City had United absolutely sorted at that stage until that very bonkers moment.
I'm going to interject because we must be watching different games, because I pretty much remember Fred pocketing Kevin De Bruyne all game from minute 1 to minute 90. So that's all I'm going to say. Right, I need a striker from you both.
I can't budge from Haaland because of the deep impact he's made this season. I can't. I think Toney and Mitrovic have done incredibly well. And actually, Marcus Rashford is a lovely guy from Manchester. As a human being, I would want him to do really, really well. He's a lovely fella. And I'm glad he's had a purple patch.
I think, going on the logic that Ian said about the difference they made to their team, considering what is behind them, that makes Mitrovic's haul even more impressive, because if you're to say the embarrassment of resources that are behind Haaland, he has been set up for success. If you gave Mitrovic that same caliber of player, now I'm not saying anything that diminishing Haaland's talent, but if you consider if Haaland had to do that with Fulham's midfield behind them, you'd be saying, and Mitrovic was getting his haul with that City midfield, you'd obviously be saying Haaland's haul at Fulham was more impressive than Mitrovic's, considering the embarrassment of midfielders. So I think by virtue of being fair and equitable, you have to kind of lean towards the guy that's come through more adversity to get his haul, and that is Mitrovic.
I was really happy to compromise on everything else, even Kevin De Bruyne for Guimaraes, etc. I would struggle to sleep tonight on stats that says 66 minutes per goal versus the closest at 117 and 170 or whatever. For I just think it's, and you may be right when we're sat here and we're voting for strike of the whole season, because Haaland has struggled the last couple of games. I might be with you. I might compromise. And if Mitrovic hits 22, 23 goals and Toney does, I'm with you. But if I've got to look at the first half of a season, in my whole life, I've never seen a player have such an impact in a country he's never played in before, like he has. He's like someone has just driven a juggernaut through a theatre play.
I think Judge Cullum's going to have to adjudicate on this one.
Well, I'm not going to adjudicate on this one because both of you are making very, very good points. So what I'm going to do is up to the chat. They have the final say, and it is between Mitrovic and Haaland. So get your votes in. And once they are in, I will obviously announce the winner. All right, quickly on to the next one. Manager of the season. Rebel.
I think for me, obviously Ten Hag gets an honourable mention, but unfortunately, I think there are other managers that deserve a lot of credit, having to work with probably lesser resources. Obviously, Arteta, the guy that's leading his team to the top of the Premier League, gets a mention. And finally, there is a guy called Eddie Howe that's doing phenomenal things at Newcastle. And given the fact that even though they have tons and tons and tons of money, they haven't really splashed the major cash. I think you have to be impressive with what Eddie Howe has done. Like, we gave Ten Hag, Casemiro and Anthony late in the summer window. We know what City bought under Pep. We know what Arteta was given at Arsenal. So I think you'd have to kind of lean towards Eddie Howe because that was unexpected.
I want to start, a little bit similar down. I want to talk about Silva at Fulham. He was booted out by Everton. He had a good run at Watford, one of the few managers who was a success. He's learned some things to come back. And that Fulham team when you look at their team, you're thinking, how on earth are they in the position they are? I think Thomas Frank's gradually built a really great team at Brentford. Those two get voted. And I think Eddie Howe has done a job far better than I thought he was going to do. I thought he was a little bit of a soft boy manager, but I've been amazed with the stature that he's developed as a more grown up manager. But my vote, I saw Arsenal live recently against City, and City did win 1-0 just in the FA Cup. But I've never seen a team as marshalled and disciplined as Arsenal on that night. I get why they're top of the league. I've never seen a team so first to the tackle. On the touchline, as soon as there was a gap in any play, I've never seen a team all huddle around their manager instantly, including the goalkeeper, and then go back with a slightly different tactic. I've never seen team as marshalled as well as I saw Arsenal that night. I'm just being really honest. And they started with a bit of a patchwork team that hadn't played together. And City started with a pretty much full strength team. I think Arteta has done an unbelievable job there. And he's done it through just detail. Drill effect. I have to take my hat off, and the television doesn't always show the strength of all that. But when you're watching from fairly high up in the stands and you see the position of every single player in that Arsenal team, you see their anticipation of the ball, you see their discipline. They never lost concentration for a second. I do like the job Eddie Howe's done, but having seen them live, I do want to take my hat off to Mikel Arteta. He would get my vote, actually.
I think in the face of the adversity that he's faced, Arteta has come through quite a ringer from Arsenal fan groups. Not necessarily the Arsenal fans that are in our chat at the moment, but there has been a number of people calling for his head over the years and wanting him gone. And it's now that they're seeing kind of the fruits of the labour. Eddie Howe does deserve an honourable mention, but I think top of the table speaks for itself. And despite Tony not thinking we were going to vote for him, it is Arteta.
Hey!
Yeah, I'm not even going to try and throw a spanner in the works at all. The way Arteta's managed to pull this team together and turn them around from what has been a very bad couple of seasons, it just speaks absolute class of the guy. He's done an absolute amazing job. So Arteta is the manager of the season so far. Well done to Arteta. Your bag of Haribo will be posted to you as your reward. Silver one has come in. He's the only person that has voted for the 2, and he has given it to Mitrovic.
Get out of town.
Mitrovic is the striker.
He's actually flip-flopped like Eamon Dunphy.
Yeah, no, first answer only. First answer only, I'm afraid. Okay, this brings us up to team of the season so far. Now, as I said, we're going to have to go through this quickly because I'm bearing in mind the time, should I say. We have 4 teams here. Now, I'm going to bring yours up first, Rebel, because you're here and you can explain a little bit. So here is your team. Let me take this banner off. There
Yeah, Pope, I think, is self-explanatory. There's no need to go into that. He was our joint pick for goalkeeper of the season. Trippier at wing back, I don't think Ian would argue with that one either.
No.
The two centre backs that have really shone through, Saliba and Martinez, and then I think Shaw, along with the Newcastle left back, has been the two standouts. But Shaw just seems to have been a man possessed this season, and I think is deserving of his space. The one place I would be open to debate is possibly if we wanted to use a more attacking player, that KDB would come in for Partey. But I think that I would be very open to KDB coming into that three in midfield. But I think Odegaard and Casemiro are, for me, locks in that front. And then the three most dangerous men in football are up top.
Very interesting, very interesting. So that is Rebels' team of the season so far. I'm going to bring up somebody that is in chat, Silver One. I'll let you have a look at this one, Ian.
Zinchenko left back, you've got to be joking.
Apart from that?
Again, I'm always going to challenge Odegaard. I think he's got such an amount of class around him. He looks better than he is. I think Partey, I wouldn't challenge. Xhaka, I absolutely would challenge. So the players there, I would challenge Odegaard, I'd challenge Xhaka. I still stand by my guns that I'm not convinced that Rashford has had a complete first half of the season. And the object is to find a player of the whole half of the first season, if not just the second quarter. And Zinchenko wouldn't even make my... I mean, he's been injured half the time. And he's been playing left midfield in front of a back three, so I don't even know how you can pencil him in there. Martinez has been great, Saliba's been great, Trippier's been great, Pope's been great. So the players I am happy about are Trippier, Martinez, Pope, Saliba, Partey, and Saka. Not convinced about Tony, not convinced about Odegaard, not convinced about Rashford, not convinced about Zinchenko.
Interesting. Well,
can I ask who goes in those positions? Who do you replace, just to kind of come to fruition on the comments?
If you want a pure, if you want playing a back four, which it looks like in the formation there, I think Dan Burns did well at Newcastle. I still think of. I know Liverpool have had a dodgy season, but if I was playing fantasy football league, I would pick Andy Robertson every day. I mean, he's been the one good player for Liverpool. He is still tanked down that flank. He's got a wonderful left foot. He's a great defender. You can't diss a whole team at Liverpool. Andy Robertson, in my view, is the best left back in the world.
Interesting. Well, there is a running theme throughout these teams, in quite a lot of them. This is Bobby's team. So Pope, Trippier, Botman, Martinez, Estupina, Casemiro, Polinia, Xhaka, Almiron, Mitrovic, and Rashford. Obviously, there's some players in that team that have been in the other two as well.
The interesting one, and I'd love to pick Bobby's brains if he was in the chat, is picking Botman over Saliba, his own guy, and I would love to hear the thinking behind that. But I don't argue with it. I think it's a call that is down to preference. Pauline, actually, that is an interesting one, the midfield. He has been a bit of an unsung hero for Fulham. Is he in the best three? Not for me at the moment. Almiron, again, he's been a decent player.
He's a second quarter player. First quarter, he wasn't at the races.
It's an interesting one, and I'd love to hear the thinking behind. Actually, I'd love to ask him actually why he picked Xhaka out of his three midfielders as well, because I think that is an interesting one. I would have thought if he was putting an Arsenal midfielder in there, he would have went with Partey. So trying to get inside the head of Bobby would be very interesting in this particular selection.
We will.
I just challenge Bobby and say, you've been given a football team, and a bit like Chelsea, and you can sign anyone you want in the Premier League, and you offered Saka, and you choose Almiron. Really?
We will, at some point when he's less busy, get him on. I have got this on my computer saved, so we will challenge him on his choices here. But interestingly as well, he did originally have Partey in his team and then asked me to swap him out for Xhaka. Not sure why, he never actually gave an explanation, but that's his team. And the final team we have is from Ross. And this is Ross's team. So obviously Pope, Shaw, Varane, Saliba, Trippier, Almiron, De Bruyne, Odegaard, Rashford, Haaland, and Mitoma.
Okay, the one that stands out for me, and this is the only one I'm going to take, and I'm going to let Ian take the rest, is as much as I love Varane and as much as the experience he brings to Manchester United and how much he complements Martinez, if I'm picking one of the two to be in my centre-back partnership, it's Martinez.
I agree. And again, Mitoma, Almiron, Rashford, their second quarter purple patch is not the whole first half of the season. For me, that's only my personal point of view. And I think Shaw's done well. He's been rejuvenated. You probably watch him a lot closer than I do. But again, that first quarter, how good was he in that first quarter before the World Cup? And surely he's not in the class of Andy Robertson.
Very interesting comments there. Well, I have got them saved on my PC. So when it comes to the end of the year show, and we'll look at the team of the season complete, we'll see if any changes have actually happened or not.
Interestingly, just pulled up this season's Premier League stats. The total haul for Andy Robertson so far this season is 5 assists. That's all he's got in total all season. Now, for an Andy Robertson season, that is well below par in what he's delivered. And at the moment, Shaw, if I could just bring it up on my screen, is currently got 1 goal, 3 assists, but he's been creating a lot more chances as defined by the Opta stats.
Yeah, but he's playing in a better team. The other bit of interest is there's not been a single mention for a single Chelsea player. That must be the first time. If we three had been on the show for 20 years, it must be the first. I can't think of a single Chelsea player. I mean, usually it'd be Reece James, who I think is a phenomenal right back, and Chilwell, I think, is fantastic left back. They would be light up there. I do think we've rubbed over Thiago Silva. He is a god of a centre back, and I've never seen him have a bad game, Thiago Silva. And he should probably get a mention in what's been a poor team. At 38, he's unreal. The way he reads the game is incredible. And I know we talked about players in big games. He's a really good big game player as well. In terms of the way he reads the game. But I can't think of any of the Chelsea players I've put in there. But that's weird, isn't it?
I'll be honest with you, Gene, I think if we roll this forward at the end of the season, and we're just talking about the back end of the season awards before we talk about the whole season, chances are we might be talking about how phenomenal Mudryk has been coming towards the end of the season, how influential Enzo Fernandez has been, because they're after buying some absolutely lovely players. So even though we haven't mentioned them yet, I don't think... actually, there's a guy that they signed, is it Budashali? He looks absolutely phenomenal at centre-back as well. So there's a lot of nice Chelsea players that once they knit together, I'm sure they're not going away anytime soon. But you're right, it is phenomenal that for the first 19 games of the season, we're not even blinking an eyelid in their direction.
Yeah, indeed. Now, that is going to wrap up the show for today. It's been absolutely fantastic having Rebel and Ian on. I'm going to bring Rebel up first. Tell everybody where they can find you and any shows coming up, mate.
Well, Rebel, the Rateless Texter column will be found here tomorrow night again on the Football Lounge on FTSN. And if you are of the Man United persuasion, you will find me also on the Man United Agenda YouTube. And I think I'm back on there tomorrow night as well. So I'm doing a double bubble on shows.
Thank you very much. And Ian, always a pleasure to have you on, mate.
Yeah, maybe on the Mullet Show tomorrow night with Ollie and the guys.
Yeah, Mort's show is a fantastic show. Make sure you watch it. They have a massive laugh on that show. And you will find me here on Full Time Sports Network whenever I feel like doing a show, because I'm the boss, so I decide when now. I'm joking. I will be on tomorrow as well with Rebel, and we've got a lot more content coming up. So the best way to keep up to date with us is to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell. And go follow us on Twitter as well at Full Time Sports.
An order from tier rate.
What? I'm not giving you no more Rafe. You've had enough. But for me and everybody else, I hope you have a cracking rest of your night.
Hold on.
Enjoy yourself. Oh.
Late question.
Oh, before you go, who's looking forward to the Manchester derby between Man City and Salford next season? Oh dear. There's always something. There's
always a wag, isn't there? I'm actually looking forward to Everton Liverpool. I think no one's talks about the next weekend. If ever there was a game that's going to throw some fireworks, that's going to be a game next weekend.
Indeed it is. We will be covering all the games that we can possibly cover as well, so make sure you tune in. And it's a goodbye from every single one of us here. Have a good rest of your night.